What's up, Story Geeks? It's Jay.
Hello, I'm Justin.
Justin's back with us. Obviously, Justin was with us last week as well, which means we get 2 weeks with Justin. Why not?
It's wonderful.
That sounds like a movie title, 2 weeks with Justin.
I'd watch that movie.
I'd watch the movie too. It'd be super positive. It'd be a very positive movie.
Very positive.
There would not be a lot of conflict in it.
No, there'd be a lot of like really bad puns, but we'd all end up like feeling pretty good about ourselves.
Well, Daryl says he wants 2 weeks of Justin, so I know I need to. He also says I need to take the next vacation so that you guys can do stuff without me. It's true. That's very true. That'd be a good thing.
Believe the keys.
That's right. That's right. So thank you guys for joining us. Some of you had joined us actually on Instagram Live, on the Story Geeks Instagram channel. I just set the video live while we were setting up, and you guys hung out with us. Some of you guys hung out with us, so appreciate that. Welcome, Super Bomb. Thanks for joining us. Daryl Smith, Mary Baldwin, Jim Baldwin, Captain Akron, all of the usuals. Maybe Cody and Sarah will jump in a bit here too. Today we're talking about Spider-Man. So you guys may have seen we did a Spider-Man podcast, which came out this last Tuesday, and it was with Scott Nicewander from NerdSync, and it was awesome. We did a really deep dive into all things Spidey, and we wanted to follow up that conversation with today's live show conversation. Yeah. We haven't heard from Justin yet. You guys heard a little bit from me. So we have some new questions, some other questions that I've already answered, but we haven't heard from you. We haven't heard from Justin. So you guys got to give us your comments in the chat, which will be really, really cool. Oh, thank you. Captain Akron says the podcast was awesome. Appreciate you, Captain Akron. We appreciate that. And Superbomb says, Spider-Man, more like the best superhero ever.
I've got some thoughts about that, and they're not far off from that.
You know what? You can't go wrong with Spidey.
You can't.
Spidey's awesome. So we'll dive into those questions, but before we do that, definitely make yourself known in the chat and go back and forth. Yeah, but Daryl, we have new questions. So Daryl says he'll be quiet. You've already heard from him, but I actually have some new questions. So that'll be fun too as well. Some of them will be deep. Some of them will be not so deep. Some of them will be in the middle. So we'll just see how it goes. How did your week go, Justin?
My week has been great.
Awesome.
I'm having a weird week because my wife is at school in Oregon. So I have a lot of time planned with other friends, but it's been a good full week. Yeah.
That's awesome.
How has your week been?
Pretty good. It's been a very full week as well. And we're in the studio now, but I've said before, like on the live show, that our house is under construction. And there is AC in the house now, but obviously it doesn't work super well because there's no insulation on half the house. So we are trying to escape the 110-degree heat tomorrow, which is what's forecasted for our area.
Yep.
By going to the beach or something, because we got to get out and do something.
Absolutely.
So we're going to get out and go hang out there, but we'll see how it goes.
And I don't know how much you want to plug this, but weren't you doing some recording or something earlier this week? Or is that not?
Was I doing what?
Recording of some kind.
Oh, I don't. Oh, yes. Yes. So in addition to doing our podcasts, which we do under the Story Geeks banner, the Reclamation Society, which is the production company behind the Story Geeks, this is the logo, that's why I'm pointing to the shirt, Reclamation Society logo. We did our first audio book chapter recording. So this is a pretty cool thing. If you guys are into steampunk, Western, sci-fi, fantasy, we have a story called Death of a Bounty Hunter that is coming out. The first episode will probably be out in the next 3 to 4 months or so. These things take a long time to produce, obviously. So, and the first chapter, the recording was really cool. I had an actor drop out of the production at the very last minute, and I got a new actor, and the new guy is fantastic. The new guy is amazing. And not only is the new guy amazing, he also is very method, which I was not expecting. It's because I've worked with several actors, but I haven't worked with the method actor yet. And so this guy would like pump himself up for these scenes. And I was like, I'm glad I'm not acting in this scene and I'm just producing this and directing it, because this is very intense. It's very, very intense. But it was really, really fun. So I think you guys will want to check that out. The cool thing is, too, is that Patreon subscribers will be getting access to the chapters. So Patreon, if you're a subscriber on Patreon, you will get access to the chapters. You'll get them before other people get them. It'll be really cool. So if you're interested in that, definitely check out our Patreon account and you'll get some of that. So yeah, thanks for asking about that. I forgot about that because it was super intense and it took all day to film and record. So so it's kind of crazy. So Super Bomb, don't worry about it. If you don't have the money for Patreon right now, don't worry about it. There'll be other ways for you to access that content later on. And you can always it'll come out when all the segments and the chapters are done. It'll come out as a full audiobook and be available for purchase. So you can put it on like a birthday list or a, Christmas list or whatever holiday you celebrate. Put it on your list. You can get it then. And it'll be really, really fun. I think you guys are going to like it. We've spent a lot of time on it and just refining and refining and refining. So anyways, enough about that stuff. Let's jump into Spider-Man. So the first question I have for you guys, and we answered this, Daryl and I answered this along with Scott from NerdSync. We answered this on the podcast. And the question basically is, who do you think played the best Peter Parker? So Justin,
yes,
and you in the comments, who played, of Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and now Tom Holland, who played the best Peter Parker in your personal opinion?
Okay. Now, depending on the minute you ask me, my answer will change. But the one I'm going to go with right now is Tobey Maguire.
759.
We'll see again in a little bit.
So Tobey Maguire.
Tobey Maguire. I think a lot of it has to do with he was the Spider-Man to me. A lot of what I am going to end up talking about is that Sam Raimi, with those Spider-Man movies, made one of the first great superhero comic book movies of our time. It was leading toward what we now have with the DC universe, the MCU. It was before all that, but between Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and the original X-Men movies, that's where I feel like comic book movies got started in a big way in pop culture, but then especially for me, that's when I kind of came into comic books and then went backwards to Superman and the original Batman and all that stuff. So Tobey Maguire, when I think of Peter Parker's journey with Uncle Ben. I went into Star Wars. But
we do that a lot of times on the Story Geeks podcast.
There's a lot of uncles in this. When I think about that journey, think about him becoming Spider-Man, that initial story, I think of Tobey Maguire. So I'm saying Tobey Maguire.
So Peter Parker.
For Peter Parker.
So for Peter Parker, you're a Tobey Maguire guy.
I am.
Okay, so here's some of the comments that we've got thus far. We've had Caitlin Gibson says Tom Holland, hands down. He's the first one that she ever liked. Monty Thigpen is always breaking the rules.
Okay.
He's breaking the rules all the time, and he's not going with any of the live action Spider-Man. No, he's not going to do that. He's going to go with Drake Bell, which is an animated Spider-Man.
Okay.
Now, I have no idea because I've never seen. Well, I saw the '90s animated Spider-Man series, which was phenomenal. But I have actually not seen the newer ones, so I have no idea. Super Bomb agrees with Monty that Drake Bell is fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah, so we got to check that out. Captain Akron says Tom Holland. He also says not all spiders need webs to catch their prey. Very nice. Marie Baldwin says Tom Holland, and she thinks that he's probably closest to the comic book. But she also started to like the character because of Tobey Maguire. Now, were you exposed to Spider-Man primarily through comics or primarily through film?
Primarily through film.
Okay.
I was exposed originally through the 90s, whatever cartoon. But yeah, I was not reading comic books at that time. And so it was through film.
Yeah.
It was through Tobey Maguire's films.
Yeah, I had one of the earliest comics, and I used to read it over and over and over again, and it was fantastic. But I didn't get a lot into the comics. Like, my parents had bought me that one, trade of that one story. And it was the origin story. So it was the Uncle Ben death, the wrestling when he goes to do the wrestling match, and all that kind of stuff. It was really, really good. Also, Superbomb had said that he felt like that Tom Holland was the truest to the comics. He's the most teenage superhero compared to Garfield and Maguire, which is a really good point. Andrew Garfield, does not seem like a teenager. he's going to college. Like, maybe it's his 6th year of high school. I don't know. But Peter Parker is supposed to be a genius too, so I have no idea. Also, Jim Baldwin says no one is talking about Nicholas Hammond, and I honestly do not know where Nicholas Hammond comes from.
I'm gonna IMDb it right now.
So you're gonna have to check that out. In the meantime, if I go to sip my water, I have to reach over to do like this, which is super awkward, but I just wanted you guys to see the Story Geeks logo on the new mugs. I just got the mugs, so it's kind of cool. So the next question I have for you guys, it sounds like there's quite a bit. I mean, there's a couple animated Spideys. Oh, he played him in the 70s. Oh, I know who you're talking about, actually. Now I know who you're talking about.
There's a picture of it.
It's epic. It's like if you took the Adam West Batman and the Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man.
They exist in the same universe.
They exist in the same universe.
Even though it's DC and Marvel.
That's right.
But I mean, just fascinating. Right. Just time.
You know what? I used to love that show too.
Huh.
I used to love. I mean, I was watching reruns basically in the 80s.
Huh.
And as a kid, you can't beat that. I mean, Spider-Man is on your TV. Now, we're going to switch from Peter Parker to Spider-Man. Who plays the best Spider-Man? And I know that Monty's going to break the rules. What do you think, Justin?
I'm jumping on board with Tom Holland. I think he's really quippy. I think he is a lot of fun. And just that they gave him another character, Tony Stark and Happy, to interact with lets him bring out more of the Spider-Man that we see in the comics, in the crossovers and things like that. So we get more of the fun, young superhero that is just, fun.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going with Tom Holland. And Tom Holland was so close for Peter Parker, but I had to go with Tobey Maguire.
Yeah. Yeah, so you guys got to let us know, who is your favorite Spider-Man? If you guys listened to the podcast already, which I think a lot of you guys did, which thank you for doing that. Really appreciate it. Marie Baldwin actually says Tom Holland, all of his gymnastics and acrobatics made him really believable in the costume. And then Caitlin says Spider-Man's quips always bothered her. However, Tom Holland's Spider-Man's jokes delivery feels so natural. I really feels like the jokes are a high school kid would say coming out of a spontaneous moment, which is really great. My favorite Peter Parker and favorite Spider-Man, if you listen to the podcast, you know this already, are both Tom Holland, because I really think Tom Holland fits that character like no other. Like, he just fits it. Now, granted, it's a younger Spider-Man, and I think Superbomb actually brought that up. It is a younger kind of example of what we see from Spider-Man. But I like that. I think he fits in that. And it's so unlike all of the other MCU heroes, most of whom are pretty mature at this point, right? Maybe with the exception of like Scarlet Witch, but even she seems pretty mature.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I like it.
And I was listening to or reading an article about Incredibles 2, and Brad Bird was saying that he made it right after the second movie, because if they had made it later, the characters would have fundamentally just been their powers. But if you make it of them growing up, figuring out how to be people, figuring out how to be themselves, and use their powers, that's far more interesting than just the kid that runs fast, the girl that can use the force fields. So making him younger makes him more interesting. He's not only Spider-Man, he gets to be a rounded, full, growing character.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that. So get your votes in for sure. Superbomb actually said the best Spider-Man in their mind is probably Josh Keaton, and then Then Monty said Superbomb is his Spider-Man soulmate, because they liked all the same cool stuff. So that's cool. Now we're going to get into a little bit of a deeper question. So this is kind of more like a podcast question that you would hear from us. And that is, there's this line that's kind of quintessential in Spider-Man lore. And that is, with great power comes great responsibility. It's usually uttered from the mouth of Uncle Ben prior to Uncle Ben's demise, which is a very intense thing to say, especially with this kid that's going to wrestling matches and being a spider to win wrestling matches. So with great power comes great responsibility. Justin Weaver, is that true? Is that a true thing? And why or why not is it true? And if you're in the comments, let us know. Is that statement ringing true to you? Why or why not?
I think it is true. And I'm going to use a line of reasoning that I used in the podcast that we filmed last week. Okay. And so it's a little bit of a spoiler alert for how I feel about certain things. But if you look at all of your abilities, all of your resources, all of your personality, all of your traits, whatever you have as a responsibility. Then I was using the term vocation, that all of those are a responsibility, they're a vocation of yours. And so everything that you have, you get to be responsible for. So with great power comes great responsibility. With that ability to save people comes a very unique vocation, a very unique responsibility. So, I mean, that's a really short version, but yeah, with, you know, regardless, you know, none of us are probably superheroes, but if we have any superhero fans watching this, I'd love to know that. But if regardless of who you are, whatever resources you have, you're responsible for them. You know, they're probably not spider powers, but whatever, abilities and personality traits and education and just status and things like that, you get to be responsible for. So, and with the greater resources comes greater responsibility. So I do agree with that. You agree with it.
I agree with it too. And it looks like everybody in the comments is agreeing with it. I think actually you could even go farther with it, because you could say, if you're responsible for something, it doesn't matter if you have great power or no power. And I think actually you can put yourself in the place of a victim if you're not actually saying I have responsibility and I can take responsibility for whatever I know that I can do and control. So I would even take it a little step farther. It's not only with great power comes great responsibility. Even if you have a little bit of responsibility, you should be taking that responsibility very seriously. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what Tony is trying to teach Spider-Man as he becomes his sort of like pseudo mentor in Homecoming. I think he's trying to impart those things on him as well. And I think one of the things that we see in the world around us, we have a big distrust of leaders who we feel like will not take responsibility. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have seen this before, but if you ever encounter a leader, and this is something that I would say, is that a really good leader takes responsibility for all of the things. In fact, this is one of the kind of the trademark things I've heard in leadership before is you take responsibility for all of the bad things that happen, and you give credit to all the good things that happen to the people that follow you. And I think that's a really good, thing. Bye, Superbomb. Glad you could join us for the time you did. We'll see you on the next one. And I feel like with great power comes great responsibility. And if you don't have great responsibility as a leader of people, that's not good. Yeah. So I agree with that as well. So it's kind of a question that I think, I think everyone agrees with great power comes great responsibility. I think the bigger question though is what sort of responsibility? And I think in my mind, it means the responsibility to do good for other people. Yeah. The responsibility to do good for other people, not just to live out your fantasies as a leader and do whatever you want to do, but to truly figure out what is going to help the most amount of people and then institute those kinds of things. So any further thoughts, let us know. Most people are saying it's absolutely true. And then actually Mary said the same thing about Tony Stark trying to teach him some of that. Caitlin said that Sam, her husband, thinks that Tom Holland's Spider-Man is too technical and dependent on the suit from Tony Stark, which we talked about that in the podcast too. That is kind of a thing. Greg Sanders, what's up? What are your thoughts about the Spider-Man 2 leaks? Oh, yes. Okay. Spider-Man 2, I can't remember the name of it, but there were leaks. Far From Home. There were some leaks about that. I tried to avoid some of that stuff. So I did not look into it at all.
I wasn't even aware there were leaks. That's how far I avoid spoilers.
Yeah, so I don't have anything to say really about the Spider-Man 2 leaks because I don't try to avoid like trailers. I always watch trailers and stuff like that. But in terms of like if there's like leaks, I can never trust them anyway. So I'm always like, I don't even know if I should pay attention to them. But you should let us know what you think of them. Maybe it's just cool. I think I did hear that it's supposed to be funnier, or maybe that was it's supposed to be funnier. Somebody said it was supposed to be funnier. I was gonna say maybe that was Ant-Man and the and the
Wasp.
The Wasp, but that's actually supposed to be funny as well.
Nice.
MCU is just punching out comedies.
And that comes out tomorrow. And so maybe that's a good live show topic for next week.
Oh, there you go. When I think Daryl's back next week too.
Go watch it, Daryl. We'll talk about it.
So now's the next question. We talked about with great power comes great responsibility. That was cool. This is a question that I didn't put out there on Facebook. So you guys didn't know this question was coming, but I want to hear your take on it. Spider-Man is one of the only teenage superheroes. There's been more in the last few years, but of the traditional superheroes, he's the first teenager, and he's one of the only ones. Does a teenage superhero have different obligations than an adult superhero would have? Why or why not, Justin Weaver?
Well, I'm so glad you asked me this question on the spot. And
well, Justin Weaver got the questions in advance. So, you guys didn't get the questions in advance.
So my initial thought is, yes, there are different obligations. I expect more from adults than I do from teenagers.
All right.
Part of that is cultural. Part of that probably shouldn't be, but I do. I expect more from adults than I expect from teenagers. And so just going with this, with great power comes great responsibility. I think that adult superheroes need to have themselves figured out a little bit more, need to have life figured out a little bit more, need to have their responsibility figured out a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so for Spider-Man to be a character that gets heartbroken, you know, or is just really insecure about something, you know, I accept that differently than I would with an adult.
Sure.
Where it's like, come on, guy, you know, like buck up and go save the world, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like I expect less, and I have a little bit more grace for growth and a little bit of not knowing yourself and just the awkwardness that comes with being a teenager and growing up.
Yeah, Greg Sanders tends to agree with you. He says he believes so. It is because they have a bit more on their plate and they have less responsibility than adults. So very, very similar to what you're saying. You know, the development of human beings, there's a lot going on when you're a teenager.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. Monty says teens, in a sense, have more responsibility because as he gets older, I think he's referring to Spider-Man. The practices that they've put in place are going to be 10,000% more amplified as an adult. And Marie Baldwin says, crazy hormones and superpowers, kind of a scary combo. I tend to agree, although I think that if we're going to say that you are a teenager and then we're going to use the term superhero in the same sentence, teenager, superhero. I feel like if you're going to qualify as a superhero, I have the same expectation of you that I would have as an adult. I don't care what your age is if you're going to be labeled superhero.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and you're going to just try and do cool stuff in your neighborhood, I think I might have a different expectation, right? You're not a superhero per se, but you're a hero. You're a hero in training. If we were talking about Star Wars, I'd say you're a Padawan, right? I don't have the same expectation of a Padawan that I have of a Jedi. But once you say you're a Jedi, I have the same expectation of you regardless of what age you are.
Right.
Now, if you're a master, that's different than if you're just a Jedi Knight, right? But I do think that I would say that if you're going to call them a superhero, so I know that I'm like breaking apart that sentence like way too much, but I think that, and I think that that's kind of what, I think in the MCU, that's kind of what Tony's trying to do. He's trying to protect Peter from himself. Because he's trying to say, like, dude, you're just a kid. Like, stop climbing the rocket. Yeah. And then, of course, Spider-Man's like, but I can do something. And I think that tension is actually really healthy and really good. I like to see it when – so I work at a university. I like to see when the students at the university say, I want to do stuff. I go, that's awesome. Now, the more you do, the more responsibility you're going to have. If you're going to call yourself – so I work with entrepreneurs. If you're going to call yourself a business person, act like a business person. You can't act like a teenager, right? Yeah. So I think it does depend a little bit on that.
And in Avengers Infinity War, he more or less gets knighted and declared that he's an Avenger And so now he's taking on the expectations of what I would expect of an Avenger, not just what I would expect of a teenage kid.
Exactly right. Exactly right. All right, so I'm going to jump into this last question that we have. That was a really fun discussion, so thank you guys for joining in. There was really good stuff in the comments too, so appreciate you guys hanging out with us on that. Last question that we're going to do for tonight, and then Justin and I have to break so we can get into our podcast that we're recording tonight, which will come out, actually, I believe, a week from Tuesday. Next Tuesday will be Ant-Man, and then Jurassic Park, our Jurassic Park podcast. We're recording that tonight, so stay tuned for that. Last question I have for you is, we do a different type of podcast on occasion. You joined us for one of these before, at least one of them. It's called Make It Better. And we take a story that we actually probably like already, but we say, if this story was going to be amazing, what would we do to make this story better? Now, Spider-Man Homecoming is awesome. I love Spider-Man Homecoming. But my question for you guys, and my question for Justin Weaver, and I haven't answered this question yet either, is, what's one way you would make Spider-Man Homecoming better? What would you say?
I would say that they needed to rewrite the way that they did Happy's character in that story. The chauffeur, played by Jon Favreau, who directed Iron Man 1 and 2, and Elf, and I love that guy. But he, in Iron Man 3, he was a little cantankerous, a little grumpy, like asking everyone where the security badge, you know, kind of, it was a little bit of a joke. But I feel like in Spider-Man Homecoming, he came dangerously close to being incompetent and a villain. Like, I did not like him in that movie. And I don't know if they were trying to play it for humor or if they were just making him a foil to Peter Parker. But I didn't feel like it was in his character, and it made him like really unlikable. And much of the movie is his fault. Like, and much of the finale of the movie, you know, if he had answered Peter's phone calls and you know, treated it with more respect and everything, and not just brushed off the teenage kid that we didn't expect much from.
Right.
I think a lot of the movie could have played out differently. You know, which wouldn't have made the movie as fun, but I think they could have made some good climactic scenes, some good struggles without kind of throwing Happy's character under the bus.
Yeah, yeah. I can totally see that. That makes a ton of sense to me. I'm struggling with this question because I really like this movie. And it's always hard. The more you like the movie, the harder it is to make it better. And what I'm going to say and what I came up with, I am not sure makes it better. So before I do that, I'm going to read some of the comments.
Great.
Because I probably will agree with the comments more than I agree with myself. But so Monty says, to make Homecoming better, put Tom in the Spidey suit more often and have him swinging from tall buildings. So maybe a little more perspective.
The cool factor. A
little more Tobey Maguire with the Spider-Man costume maybe. Daryl Smith says, less jokes at the expense of the MCU. It started to undermine itself a bit and then hurt the tone of the movie at times. And then Caitlin says she agrees with you.
Okay.
Mary says ditto. I think she's probably saying that to Caitlin, meaning that she agrees with you.
Thank you.
Or she could be meaning that to say that she agrees with Daryl or Monty. And then Greg Sanders says, I feel they needed to develop a few more traits Spider-Man has in the comics, such as his bad luck. That is a really, really good comment. Really, really good comment. Caitlin Gibson says, I think a bit less reliant on the suit makes sense. I'm not sure my comment makes this movie any better at all. In fact, it may make it totally worse. I feel like there's a tendency in the MCU to lean into the comedy aspects of the MCU. My problem with that is that sometimes I think it can take away of what's going on in the story. I really like it when a story takes some really intense chances and takes some characters through some really emotional journeys. I'm not sure we get that in Homecoming. I'm not sure that we have to have it in Homecoming. I don't want every movie to be dark and dreary. But I still think the movie that captured it better than any other movie in the MCU, and that's why it's my favorite, is Guardians of the Galaxy. It has characters who are going through super traumatic things, and yet at the same time, we are getting lots of comedy, right? Like Rocket's a hilarious character, one of my favorite MCU characters now. So I would try and take away some of the comedy to make it a little bit darker. Now, as I say that, it probably would make it worse. But I wish that more MCU movies would do that, because we've had now Ant-Man. So always take a second to promote your podcast. Ant-Man podcast coming on Tuesday. Ant-Man, very humorous.
Yeah.
Deep themes in it. Not super dark though, just kind of lighthearted. Mm-hmm. So Ant-Man, we had Thor Ragnarok, super lighthearted. In fact, I can barely get through that movie because it just feels like a joke fest to me. I mean, it's funny, but as an MCU movie, I'm like, if I want to watch a comedy, I'll watch Thor Ragnarok. If I want to watch a superhero movie, I'll pick something else. Right. Now we have Spider-Man: Homecoming, which is nowhere near as jokey as those other two. It's a little deeper than that. But so Spider-Man 2 saying it's even funnier. We have Ant-Man and the Wasp coming out. It's supposed to be really funny. I loved how dark Infinity War got.
Yeah.
It still had a few jokes here and there, but it got really dark. The Spider-Man scene is like the most emotionally transformative, probably the most emotional moment, except for maybe some moments from Guardians of the Galaxy in the MCU, is the Spider-Man scene from Infinity War. So that's just some things that I was thinking about. Lots of comments here. Greg agrees with Caitlin. Caitlin loves movies that make fun of other superheroes and superhero movies. Mary thinks that it was a good film that balanced the serious things with some fun and levity. And then Greg has an unrelated question for us. Do you guys like the M. Night Shyamalan hero movies? And if so, what are your thoughts on Glass? Awesome. That's what question. Spider-Man: Homecoming, awesome.
I loved it.
It's amazing.
I love Tom Holland as a personality. Whenever
Absolutely.
I see him in an interview or something, he cracks me up. He announced the name for the sequel accidentally because he was flashing the script in front of the camera. He's just a funny guy. Yeah. So I think he's a great addition to the MCU, and they hit it out of the park with that partnership with Sony and everything. So yeah, I
agree. So there's your Spider-Man live show. Last question comes from Greg. And apparently there's some trouble with the stream. Is it just because it might be just breaking up? It's hard because I've tried running a cord and like actually connecting directly to my router, and it still doesn't work perfect. So what are you gonna do? Anyways, now we're gonna break and talk about Greg's question. Do you guys like the M. Night Shyamalan hero movies? If so, what are your thoughts on Glass?
I love those movies. I've only seen Split one time. I've seen Unbreakable many times. At one point, that was my favorite movie. Near when it came out, it was the first Blu-ray I ever bought. Was that one, and it was one of the first director's commentaries I listened to. I was blown away by how much thought M. Night Shyamalan put into that movie. And then when you guys had the Geek Awards, I wasn't on the podcast, but I was texting in my answers, and I was nominating Glass for like everything, like best villain, not Glass. I was nominating Harry Crumb. What was that character?
Harry Crumb?
From Split.
Yeah,
the villain from Harry.
Something
Split.
Harry Crumb, right? It was a 3 name.
I don't even remember. See, I only saw it once in the
They're gonna know in the comments.
I'm excited to find out in the comments what his name was. But M. Night Shyamalan is still one of my favorite directors.
Kevin Wendell Crumb.
Yeah. M. Night Shyamalan is still one of my favorite directors. He disappointed me bitterly a number of times. But I feel like Split was a great movie. I'm very excited to see Glass. I'm super happy that he made that decision to pull Split into that world and to make a movie. I don't know, finishing or continuing those stories. We'll find out. I'm very excited.
I'm super excited too. And I didn't even want to see Split for the longest time until I heard the spoiler before I saw Split. And the spoiler was, this is actually going to be part of the trilogy. Yeah. So I'd already seen Unbreakable. Unbreakable's fantastic. In fact, probably not acknowledged as well as it should be in the world of superhero film. Fantastic film, really small film. I love that. Very much like an art house film in some regards. And then we had Split, and I'm like, I don't want to see Split because I don't really like horror movies. I'm not sure. I watched Split and thought it was phenomenal. And the performance of James McAvoy is out of this world, which is really, really, really great. So really looking forward to Glass. Totally agree with everything you said. It's going to be fantastic. M. Night Shyamalan has been our best director and our worst director. But you know what? I love it that he takes chances. Yep. So maybe we'll get like a what am I trying to say? Grand Slam. Maybe we'll try to see a Grand Slam performance from him. Yeah. So. And I think I saw Split with Daryl. So it was a Story Geek movie even before I knew about Story Geeks. That's right. All right, well, we're gonna go ahead and close out here, guys. Definitely stay tuned. We have our Ant-Man. So a lot of MCU stuff going on right now in the Story Geeks world. Our Ant-Man podcast that we did with Tony Kim, the CEO of Hero Within. He runs a line of clothing products that actually are basically like sophisticated geek wear. You can like wear it to work. Really, really cool stuff. Tony Kim is on our podcast with us. Ant-Man comes out. Our Ant-Man podcast comes out on Tuesday. So you can go see Ant-Man and the Wasp over the weekend and then dive back into the first Ant-Man and hear us talk about that. We go really deep because there's these questions about like, should people get a second chance? We went crazy deep with that. So definitely check that out. It comes out on Tuesday. We're also recording a Jurassic Park podcast tonight that will come out the following Tuesday. So if you love Jurassic Park as much as we do, then that's going to be a really fascinating one. Questions, thanks to Justin Weaver with the questions on that one. If you really need more Story Geeks material right this second, you can go over to our Instagram TV channel. And I partnered with Network 1901 to do a story breakdown of the new Incredibles roller coaster, the Incredicoaster, that is at Disney's California Adventure. You can go check out that video on Instagram TV. And also, if you guys do that, let me know. Shoot me an email at thestorygeeks@gmail.com and let me know if I should do more Instagram TV videos or do more YouTube videos. I was trying out Instagram TV because a lot of times with new networks, you can maybe get like a few more followers here and there. But if you guys don't like the format or if the format doesn't really work for you that well, let me know so that we can just go back to doing YouTube videos because either way, it's fine with me. Yeah. Just trying to get it in front of people. And we've already been talking about some more attraction breakdown videos, so those will be coming. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. You're welcome, Captain Akron. Always good to see you here. And in the meantime, thank you guys all for joining us. And remember, question everything in your favorite geek stories and always seek the truth. And thanks for dropping in. Check out all of the other stuff that we have coming up. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. I think most of you guys are, and we appreciate you.